West Bengal Political Science Review. We organize webinar since 2022 in every month. Today's topic of the webinar is Democracy in South Asia, Vadis. Dr. Debasish Nandy, Professor of Kazi Nazrul University, Department of Political Science, and Professor Dr. Ashish Mistry, Professor, University of Calcutta, Department of Political Science, will speak on this topic. Dr. Ishani Noskar, Vice President of our association and editor of our journal, Professor, Department of International Relations, Jadavpur University, will chair today's webinar. I want to express my gratitude to all of them, and I want to mention that Dr. Debasish Nandy and Dr. Ashish Mistry also are the life members of our association. So I don't waste time. Now, Professor Ishani Noskar will conduct the session. I am requesting Madam to conduct the session. Madam.
Good evening. Unfortunately, my camera is not working properly, so you have to excuse me. I mean, I am not very good at this. My laptop is creating a little bit of a glitch, so I'll not waste time. I will start in any case, if that is fine with the speakers. Okay. So what at the outset, let me thank the West Bengal Political Science Association for allowing me to be a part of the proceedings in the form of a chair. For me personally, it is always going to be a learning kind of a lesson. I see two very bright scholars who are going to speak today, and the topic also seems very interesting because we all know what is happening around us in South Asia in the very recent, and not only in the very recent, but the last few years. By the way, am I audible? Because I am not visible. So, am I audible? Can anybody confirm that?
Yes.
Oh,
Yes,
thank you.
yes,
Thank you.
madam. Yes, madam.
Thank you. So therefore, what I was just trying to say is that the topic that is like South Asia co-Vadis, the democracy, what co-Vadis actually means is where is it going? Literally, it really means where are you going? So it's a kind of an introspection kind of a topic that actually sets us thinking about, really the whys and the hows of the state of democracy in South Asia. So, as a chair, I would like to just bring in some introductory remarks, so that the very the renowned scholars that we have today can set the ball rolling. So, if we see what is happening around us, this democracy has been questioned many a time by scholars, by thinkers, theoreticians, academicians, and even to a certain extent by politicians, because the democracy that has been accepted and embedded in various South Asian systems around India in the entire has been put to test in many ways. And of recent, as we see, as early as this month, around, if I'm not mistaken, 8th of September, we have seen how Nepal witnessed another upsurge, what is known as a Gen Z, the young population of the country really coming up against the leadership and uh, bringing it down, accompanied by violence. But this is not only what has happened in September this year. This was preceded by what happened in 2024 in Bangladesh. We have seen almost a similar pattern. The reasons were very different. Uh, Even prior to that, we have seen what has happened in Sri Lanka in 2022. So I think this pattern has been set rolling. Uh, Even what has happened in Bangladesh, sorry, it's in Pakistan, also questions, the form and credibility of the democratic setup that we live in as South Asian citizens. So, having said this, I think there are four lessons that I think I would ask my speakers to probably shed some light upon. The first trend that I see in the kind of democratic, so-called anti-establishment movements that are taking place, one is that the movements are pretty amorphous. They're decentralized. You would not see a very concrete face of the movements. It's basically mass mobilization and against political establishments, against the ruling class. So it questions the nature and the composition of the ruling parties because of the kind of patronization and the kind of personalism that display. So there is a question of the legitimacy of the political elite. Uh, it is definitely accompanied by a lot of violence, a lot of, I would say, at times it seems mobocracy kind of a situation. The second thing I see is that it puts to question the success of electoral democracy. uh, I don't think regularized elections are adequate enough to address the democratic issues of these of the countries of South Asia. Does it mean that the upsurges are looking for alternative models of democracy? I'm not very sure, because if you look everywhere, you do see questioning of the existing establishment, but uh, how it leads to a conclusion of an alternative system of democracy is something that one has to look at. If you look at Bangladesh, you still do not have a kind of a regular government elected. Uh, of course, in Sri Lanka, you do have elected government, which is kind of a rejection of the old order. And in Nepal, they're still sorting out things. The third thing, and I'll finish as fast as possible so that the people can speak. Third is the question of the role of the military establishment. If you see, uh, except for India, I think the role of the military has been quite prominent, especially in Bangladesh. You go to Pakistan. Maybe not so much in Nepal, but in Nepal, the police still has a role. So the role of the military is in question. Uh, how much? But one must remember, though they directly may not intervene, but once there is a politicization of the military and the military has some stakes, some strings to pull, then it is very difficult to have a purely civilian government. And fourth and last but not the least is the international replications of the kind of democratic changes that are taking place, the so-called upsurges that are taking place. If you look at Nepal's relations with China, if you look Bangladesh's relations with China, with the United States, of course, with Pakistan, if you look at, and what kind of impact it has on India, that's also something that one has to look. We as Indian citizens and also as scholars, we need to introspect, and we also need to probably speculate a bit what kind of lessons that come from there, and what are the takeaways that we have to look at. So these are the primary remarks that I think I could be putting forward to the speakers. And we have very two bright speakers. The first one is Dr. Debasish Nandy, who's an associate professor at the Department of Political Science, Kaji Nazar University, and Dr. Ashish Mistry, who is with the Department of Calcutta University Political Science. I know them, we all know them, and they are known for their work. So, therefore, I do not want to waste time on that. I will request each of the speakers to speak about roughly 20 to 25 minutes. Is that fine for the speakers? So that, we can have kind of obviously a discussion, which I look forward to and learning. So, without much ado, I now request Dr. Debashish Nandy to make his presentations. Thank you. And I would request everybody else to just go mute. Please kindly, if you can do that, right? That the echoing really matters in online sessions.
Very good evening, madam. Very good evening to all of you. At the outset, I must convey my gratitude and thanks to the organizer, West Bengal Political Science Association. I have a long association with West Bengal Political Science Association, and I must be thankful to Professor Apurva Mohan Mukhopadhyay. He is my former colleague, and he introduced me with West Bengal Political Science Association in 2003. Since then, I am the life member, and I am thankful to Kaushik Chakraborty and other dignitaries of the association, and my dear colleague Ashish Mistry, and our dear colleagues and other uh, scholars. Uh, Today, Madam also highlighted the key issues of South Asian democracy, and following the title of the today's webinar, I would like to focus on some particular issues on South Asian democracy. In the next few minutes, I will try to roam around the South Asian countries, how the South Asian democracies are surviving, whether democracy is there or not, what are the basic challenges, and what kinds of external challenges, internal challenges, the internal dynamics. I would try to focus on it. Let me start with the little historical background that most of the South Asian countries are post-colonial countries, we know. If we start from Afghanistan, that Afghanistan achieved its independence long before than other South Asian states in 1919. And unfortunately, Afghanistan, after the independent Afghanistan could not able to introduce the democratic system, and civil society, regarding civil society is not matured enough, and civil society has not been formed properly. And regarding the very well articulated democratic party system, it is also absent. Due to this lacuna, internal lacuna, and the societal clashes, I mean, it is a multi-ethnic, it is Islamic country, Islamic Republic of Afghanistan. But despite having one entity of religion, Islam could not be able to unite the country. And due to the ethnic puzzles, I mean, there are so many ethnic groups in Afghanistan, uh, Pashto, then Tajik, Uzbek, then Baluch, and a lot of ethnic groups. So each and every region is dominated by a particular ethnic groups. There is no particular leader who could lead the country, who could united the country. So due to the lack of the charismatic leader or nationalist leader, just like Mujibur Rahman in Bangladesh, just like Gandhiji, Mahatma Gandhi in India, there was a leadership, lack of leadership, and due to the internal clashes, it was a fragile state from the very beginning, and the corruption has been one of the integral part of Afghanistan. And another problem is the lack of industrialization. Being a foreign aid laden country, dependent country, Afghanistan could not be able to furnish itself. It is a landlocked country, and the democracy has not been uh, introduced for a long time. When it was introduced, it is supposed to introduce. Then the Soviet Union, Austral Soviet Union invaded Afghanistan in 1979, and instead of establishment of democracy, there was a socialist system for 10 years. And during the collapse of Soviet Union withdrew its military force from Afghanistan, and then Najibullah government formed, and it was short-lived government, and Najibullah was hanged, and he was killed by the radical forces. On the one hand, the lack of civil society; on the other hand, lack of responsible political parties. The Afghan people had no idea what is democracy. And due to the lack of modern educational system, the civil society was not formed like Sri Lanka and India. And moreover, the communication system and transport system were also not so good. So the dividend of the colonial power, which achieved by India and Sri Lanka, just like modern education system, communication system, transport system, it was not happened with Afghanistan. That is why it was neglected colonial territory of the Britishers. However, due to the lack of the social harmony and the lack of the political orientation, Afghanistan from the very beginning is just suffering from the democracy. There is thrust of democracy. After few years, we know Taliban captured the entire administration in 1996. and it remained in power for 5 years. During that period, it is just known as the darkest period for Afghanistan, and all of the democratic institutions were ruined, and there was no room for the women. There is no institutions, democratic institutions. There is no media. So it was totally a darkest period, and most of the countries in the world discarded their relationship with Afghanistan. It was not unrecognized government, Taliban government. However, Pakistan supported Afghanistan. Now, I will apply a theory that is the linkage theory, which James Regeneron also coined this theory. When some events happened in the neighboring country that must be affected in the neighboring country. So the negative effect of the Pakistani democratic culture, the Pakistani culture, military culture, radicalization, that immensely affected negatively on Afghanistan. So there is an long open border, that is Duran line. So due to the Duran line, the Pakistan, due to open border, Pakistan took this disadvantage of this Duran line, and Pakistan intentionally injected the non democratic poison to the society of Afghanistan, alongside the radical thinking also flourished in Afghanistan by Pakistan. Not only that, was elected in Afghanistan, led by uh, Hamid Karzai. but that was not possible. However, the Balochistan movement is going on the question of development and self-determination. Thousands of Baluch people were killed, and many Baluch people were sent to the prison, and still this problem has not been resolved. In the few months ago, during the Operation Sindoor, we have seen how they hosted the new Baluch state flag. So within the Pakistan, there are so many pockets, and regarding the social movements, new social movements, Pakistan is lagging behind of it, because Pakistan is the country of South Asia which could not be able to accept the globalization, and globalization could able to create a lot of jobs for the Pakistani people. If we talk about the book of T.B. Paul, he clearly mentioned Pakistan is a warrior state. So, and the other scholars mentioned Pakistan as a hard state. Even Parvez Musharraf in his autobiography, he mentioned in the Line of Fire, it is very difficult to rule over the Pakistan. Democracy cannot be sustained in Pakistan. He confessed that I tried to continue a very moderate system. So he mentioned that instead of ruling, I tried to serve the nation. But his ideology, his thinking also challenged by the radical forces. The radical Pakistan actually led by the three pillars, three sections: ISI, religious masters, and military. So the civil society intervention in the political making, in the decision making process is very much less. So it is very difficult. I had an opportunity to interact with the Pakistani scholars. With I can talk about Professor Sikandar Mehdi. He was the professor of the Department of International Relations, Karachi University. He used to regularly contribute articles, the Dawn newspaper. I met him in Kenya. He confessed that when he was a young faculty member at Karachi University, and during that time Jiaul Haq government was there, and he mentioned that whenever whenever I decided to go to abroad, then any spy was sent to follow him, and within the country he was also had to face a lot of challenges. Even his article was not published when he was very critical about the military government. So Pakistani scholars who are writing this, I have a lot of Pakistani books. I have done a project on Palestinian movement, UC sponsored project, and I have a little bit studied on Pakistan. So I came to know that most of the books are written of the Pakistan sitting in the abroad. But if they write these things sitting in Pakistan, they might be killed, they might be punished, they might be sent to the jail. So this is a problem. So there is no room for democracy. And regarding mass media, it is very much critical. Pakistan was one of the most dangerous countries for the mass media. Regarding social media, there is except YouTube and other things. Yes, Pakistani people are using Facebook, but if you see their posts, they cannot be very much critical about the government. So this is the problem. Now I'm coming to the Bangladesh, which was actually created by India, and it was isolated from West Pakistan. So when it was known as East Pakistan, and it was used as a colony by the West Pakistani government. As we know, on the issue of the imposition of the Urdu language as a national language in 1952, the students of Dhaka University, Salam Barkat, Rafiq Jabbar, they fought against the Pakistani soldiers, and they shooted out. And this linguistic spirit has been transferred into the national movement, freedom struggle in 1971. During this time, Bangladesh has witnessed a number of civil uprising in 1969 and before. But the core thing is that this is the only country, as we know, this is the based on the linguistic entity. But now that this linguistic entity has been questioned by the radical forces, the scholars are raising the question, asking the question, whether this linguistic entity has been transformed into the radical entity. And after the topple of the Sheikh Hasina's government on 5th August 2024, the question has been repeatedly asked by the Western scholars whether the entity of Bangladesh will remain same or not, because the ruling government, this government, led by Nobel laureate Muhammad Yunus, the caretaker government. This government is very much close to the radical forces, with so many organizations which were underground during the Sheikh Hasina period. the liberal entity of Bangladesh, the secular concept of Bangladesh, which was coined by Sheikh Mujibur Rahman, who sacrificed a lot to ensure this secular entity, and the first constitution of Bangladesh, which was actually formed by during the Mujibur Rahman, it is a secular constitution, inclusive constitution, and now these people of these radical people are thinking to eliminate the word of the secularism. Not only that, they are much critical about the recognition of the other religion and what is happening in Bangladesh, irrespective of, I am not talking of the religious line. The minorities are also beaten and they are also being tortured.
Within 5-7 minutes, if that is okay.
Yes.
Fine. Thank you.
And then now they are compromised. Government is compromising with this government, with this thing. And the social, and the last year we have noticed that how the youths, I mean BNP and BNP supporters and the Jamaat supporters, they played very key role to topple the Sheikh Hasina's government. Initially, that was it was known that this is the anti-quota system, but finally we came to know that was a conspiracy. So the conspiracy theory is very much there in Bangladesh regarding the assassination of Mujibur Rahman, Zia Rahman, and couple of Sheikh Hasina and Hussein Mohammad Ershad. So some are good, some are bad. So if we talk about the Maldives is a small, beautiful islands of South Asia. It gained independence in 1965. It was a British protectorate state, but British never actually intervened in the internal affairs of Maldives. But after that, Maldives introduced a democratic parliamentary system under the leadership of president. Initially, there was a prime minister post, but first president of Maldives, Mr. Jaki, and then Mamun Abdul Gayoom, he became the president of Maldives for 6 consecutive years. During the long tenure, he misused his power and he actually never actually obeyed and never respected the verdicts of Supreme Court, and nepotism was there. And for example, he recruited the criminal judges of the criminal courts of Maldives. There are 8 standard people. So then the democratic election took place in year 2008, and Mohammad Nasir was elected as a president. He was very progressive minded. He introduced the administrative reforms and judicial reforms, but he was also toppled by the opposition. However, within this period, 2012 onwards, Maldives, the radicalism has been introduced in Maldives. Before 2012, there was no radical politics, radical entity of Maldives. Now, thing is that the Maldivian politics has been complicated. Small democracy with a lot of challenges. Now, I'm moving to Bhutan. Bhutan is another Himalayan kingdom which actually which introduced parliamentary and democracy under the kingship of the monarchical system. It is called king-guided democracy and king-gifted democracy. This model is top-down model, and Bhutanese people never actually struggled for democracy. They never wanted democracy. They had no idea about democracy. The immature population. In comparison with Nepal, the Bhutanese people are immature in terms of democratic thinking. So Bhutanese king considered he is safe. Bhutan will be safe because these people will never actually topple him. These people will never move against him. That is why since 2008 there is no such incidents in the Bhutanese democracy. It is a very immature stage or premature stage. And when the first election was conducted, then there was no role of media and the 2 political parties were contested. However, despite some loopholes, Bhutan is successfully conducting the democratic practices. But whenever we talk about Nepal, what happened 2 weeks back, it is really unbelievable. And the entire culture of Nepal is corrupt, entire system is corrupt, and Ashish is the Nepalese expert. He will highlight everything. But in nutshell, I must say the evolution of the Nepali democracy since 1950s onwards, there are so many things happened in Nepal, because in the early 90s when the parliamentary democracy was introduced by the king, king was not willing to introduce. but eventually he was forced to introduce. But when the palace massacre happened in 2000, and then when Gyanendra became the king of the Nepal, then
Debasish,
2005
please
onwards,
kindly
Nepal
wind
has
up. We have to give some time to
two
Ashish
minutes.
also.
2 minutes,
Yeah,
ma'am.
okay, fine. 2 minutes,
Uh,
please.
and then he actually suspended the Nepali parliament, and he used the police forces and the military forces, and the voice of and demands of the people were totally neglected. And finally, 2008, the monarchical system of Nepal was uprooted. But then it was thought that that would be the very inclusive constitution. All the Madhesi people and other ethnic groups will be incorporated in the constitution. But unfortunately, there is no due to the not having of the inclusive constitution, Nepali people are struggling, and they are facing unemployability. They are facing the problem of corruption, and that movement, Gen Z movement, was the uh, reflection of their demands, and which was neglected for a long time by the Nepali administration, the Maoist government. Now, lastly, I must say about the Sri Lanka is a multi-ethnic country which witnessed a lot of ethnic cleansing, and for a long time, Sri Lankan government had witnessed the Tamil Sinhala conflict. But lastly, in last year, the new government formed, Mr. Kumar Shananayake, and he was the very well established politician. And he last time I went to Sri Lanka, I came to know that all of the people are satisfied with him. But Nepal needs such a leader who will talk about democracy, who will emphasize on the ethnic harmony, will talk about the error-free and the corruption-free country. So if we can eliminate the ethnic problem, if we can eliminate the corruption, we can introduce the democratic practices. If we can introduce the inclusive constitution, if we give the room to the democratic institutions and the social media and the mass media, democracy can be established, and democracy can flourish in South Asian nations. Thank you.
Uh, thank you, Debashish. That was a very comprehensive presentation. The basic takeaways that one can get from what I can gather is that uh, he talks about what are the different issues that plague every society, and he's gone into one of the very important things that he's pointing out is the political economy of the society, which is extremely important. He also points out that the historical fissures of different countries around us. But what I think is also uh, takeaway, or probably one could think about, is whether there can be kind of uniform formulas to address the various situations that one looks at in South Asian democratic issues, and whether there can be a South Asian template to handle the South Asian democratic quagmires. So I won't waste time, and we will move on to the next speaker, after which we can have a Q&A. So I invite Dr. Ashish Mistry to make his presentations another 25 minutes.
Thank you so much, ma'am. I don't know how to do it, in fact, but you know, I have an advantage because I'll confine myself in one of these cases. So probably, that can help me. So I will confine my talk, uh, only in Nepal. So just excuse me. Okay. So, you know, let us start with this Gen Z protest. And very recently we have seen this. So it is in our current memory, which will, of course, help us understand. But two, three, parallels are immediately, kind of drawn by, scholars as well as the commoners. Like, for an example, one such parallel uh, has been like probably the foreign powers like United States. They have they have a role in this, and they have a major role in this. So this is one way putting it. So this generalization was quite dominant in the public discourse. Then, of course, there was another one, like you know behind this Gen Z protest. a similar kind of pattern has been followed. For an example, in 1991, the Arab Spring, and aftermath, there were a lot of events. For an example, in Hong Kong, in Sri Lanka, in very recently in Pakistan. In fact, there was some role by the students, and in Bangladesh. So everywhere. I mean, so these are some of the parallels that came out immediately after the event. But youth uh, has always been a force in Nepal, and at the moment they are 40% of Nepal's population. So it's not that if the size or the ratio in terms of population is big, it means that they will be a dominant force. But there are of course other reasons. For an example, who are these Gen Zs? So let us look back uh, to Nepal's politics. It's not only about these parallels or these similarities, these coincidences. Uh, let us briefly revisit Nepal's history in order to contextualize this Gen Z protest, because we are all familiar. In fact, I came up with a Facebook post immediately after the event where I mentioned some of the grievances that these protesters had. Uh, but the going through the history will definitely help us understand these undercurrents. For an example, Nepal's history is really fascinating. Up till 1990, we have a particular connotation understanding Nepal. For an example, Nepal has always been termed as a Hindu state, which of course Nepal never was. Nepal was so diverse, so extremely diverse. And in the ancient times, it was actually a group of small kingdoms. But in the mid 18th century, Prithvinarayan Shah unified Nepal, and after that, you know, uh, uh, Ranas took over through an event called Got Massacre, and then came a major breakthrough for Nepal's history, that is the Mulki Ain. And the Mulki Ain came in 1854, and which actually shows how plural, you know, how heterogeneous the society is. And I prefer to call it a social laboratory. Why is so? You will, uh, get some idea if you see the statistics after 1990. After 1990, Nepal was basically defined as a Hindu kingdom. But for the first time in 1991 census, Nep- you know, the Central Bureau of Statistics in Nepal identified 59 ethnic groups. In 2001 census, it identified 75 ethnic groups. In 2011 census, it identified 125 ethnic groups. And in the latest one, it identified 139 ethnic groups. So you can make sense of the issue that there has been a politics of census, always. Politics of recognition, or rather misrecognition. Now, Nepal's history, it's not a linear history. It's not a linear progression of history. So there has been, a lot of ups and downs, bumpy roads, I should say. 1950, first, Nepal experienced a democratic, kind of government for a brief period of 9 years. In 1959, the democracy was virtually hijacked by King Mahendra Shah. And from 1959 to 1990, there was a system called partyless panchayat system, because all the political parties, major political parties, were banned. And 1990 saw a similar kind of a protest. But this, of course, there was some role by the youth, but it was a massive protest against a referendum, because there was a referendum to actually do away with this uh, partyless panchayat system. And people actually voted against it, but the results showed otherwise. Therefore, people revolted against, and this is commonly known as the first Janu Andolan, or first People's Movement in Nepal. And after 1990, then they had a democratic constitution, and then that stayed for a brief period. It stayed actually, but in 1996, it was basically a kind of hijacked again. and there was Maoist insurgency. From 1996 to 2006, there was Maoist insurgency for 10 years. And then after 2006, there was another upheaval, right? So, Janu Andolan 2 or People's Revolution 2, People's Movement 2. And in 2008, again, there was Madhesh movement. And then there was the drama with regard to the constitution drafting. There was first constituent assembly, then there was second constituent assembly, and then finally they came up with a constitution in 2015. And from 2015 to 2025, we have seen 13 times government changed and different coalitions were tried. And there were, in fact, coalitions between, the arch rivals. So it's very difficult to be a student at this moment in Nepal because if there is a question, MCQ question in examination, who is the Prime Minister of Nepal? So, question will be set, and when that examination will occur, then there will be a change in the Prime Minister. So, Prime Minister's office. So, this has been the case in Nepal. So, in 10 years' time, there was 13 times that government actually changed. So, this has been the case of Nepal. And why I have gone through this history very briefly, because it will help us understand the context in a better way. Now, as I mentioned, that Mulki Ain for the first time, it provided a kind of social segregation in terms of caste hierarchy. And, it's very interesting. In fact, I don't have much time to elaborate, but it's very fascinating. Why? Because there was a difference between plains and hills and mountains. So in the hills and mountains, there is a different structure, different caste hierarchy, whereas in the plains, there is another hierarchy, and which is famously known as the dhoti topi, kind of rivalry or dhoti topi binary. So several binaries were created, and all those, kind of social ranks were created. And, up till 1990, as I mentioned, that there was no mention of this diversity in Nepal. So basically, Nepali politics from 1990, as I mentioned, that there was a second wave of democratic experiment that happened in 1990. So 1990 onwards, we have seen so many protests, movements, and everything. And there was some kind of street democracy since 1990. And in 1990, what we have witnessed is that the number of political parties increased, and there were three forces precisely: the mainstream political parties, the palace, and of course the monarchy. So as an institution, monarchy survived till 2007. But in 2007, finally, people realized that maybe this monarchy, there because there was a seven-party alliance in 2007, so they replaced monarchy, and finally they came up with a secular republic. So from 1990 to 2015, Nepali politics has been dominated by normative debates. What are these normative debates? For an example, the debate between monarchy or secular republic. I mean, monarchy or republic, Hinduism or secularism. So these were the choices: federalism, I mean, ethnic federalism, or a kind of unitary state. So these are the binaries of normative debate that dominated Nepali politics. Nepal was, debating, the public discourse in Nepal has been centered around these. But from 2015 onwards, and in fact, people would say at 2008, when there was Madhesh movement, there were other issues like economic issues, economic development. I mean, lagging behind this in terms of, economic status. But largely, these were the issues. So normative debates. But from 2015 onwards, what we have witnessed is that we are, kind of coming out of this, uh, debate, normative debate. So there has been a paradigm shift after 2015, and people would say this is probably all of a sudden this kind of students protest happened actually, or kind of youth upheaval happened. It's not that. There is some story or some history behind this. In fact, in 2012-13, there was a movement called Occupy Balu Water. So it was a youth-led movement against gender violence. Then there was Enough is Enough movement of 2020. It was also a youth-led protest against COVID-19 mismanagement or corruption. Then there was climate activism, and that that was there. And then there was digital activism also, centered around TikTok, the use of TikTok, Twitter, and other things. Now we have to understand one thing first in order to understand whatever happened very recently. That Gen Zs, when we talk about Gen Zs, who are these people? As I mentioned little while ago, that between 1996 to 2006, this 10 years were the black, history. This is the period of a kind of dark history of Nepal's, uh, progression. Why? Because this was the era of Maoist insurgency. Now, this Gen Z, their period starts in 1997. So they spend their childhood in this uncertainty and this great and this, extremely difficult period. So they spend their childhood in this period. And during insurgency, what happens is that let me for briefly take you to Thomas Hobbes. Now Hobbes mentioned this that it is fear that haunted me also. It means that why? Because there was in Hobbes' time when Hobbes born, then year actually Spanish Armada was destroyed, and after that there was 30 years war in Europe. So he spent his early life in that uncertain period. Therefore, he came up with this kind of, characterization of the state of nature: solitary, poor, brutish, nasty, and short. Similarly, Nepal's these generation they spend their early life, their childhood, in this kind of a solitary, poor, brutish, nasty, and short kind of a life. So they don't have fear. They are fearless people, and also they don't have patience. And all psychologists would say that yes, Gen Z has bit of uh, you know uh, less patience in terms of comparing it with others, the other generations. But in Nepal's case, this has been one fundamental thing. Secondly, how can we contextualize or theorize these protesters? Now, let me employ three, kind of theoretical frames so that we can, theorize or kind of conceptualize the entity, this particular entity. Let me first introduce the concept of epistemic silence. And what is this epistemic silence? Now, it refers to a condition in which certain voices or experiences or ways of knowing are excluded, right? So their ways of knowing is basically excluded. Why? Because all that started with TikTok and the use of social media. And this is only the trigger factor. For an example, because their grievances are different. For an example, their grievance was what? Corruption, nepotism. They were always mentioning about nepotism. And just let me mention very briefly that 5 months ago, there was a video that went viral, and it was actually a speech by a schoolboy uh, who clearly mentioned in his speech that, I quote, I am present here today to immortalize a monumental change in the course of history. Nepal, our mother, this country gave us birth, nurtured us, but what did it ask in return? Just our honesty, our hard work, our contribution. But what are we doing? We are bound by chains of unemployment, fleeing abroad in search of opportunities. We are trapped by selfish games of political parties. Look, three things which are mentioned here. One is corruption, unemployment. Second is unemployment. Third is political parties. Right? Three important things. And then he mentioned towards the end of this lecture that we are fire.
Ashish, if you could wind up another 5-7 minutes, please.
Okay, ma'am. Thank you.
Thank you.
And then towards the end of his lecture, speech, he mentioned that we are fire. I mean the Gen Z. And finally, he mentioned that we will burn every despair away now. Now we must decide, and we will. Now we must decide. We will be drawn in the darkness of despair or rise as the sun of hope. So he mentioned this towards the end of his, and finally he ended up the speech with "Long live youth, long live Nepal." So from this kind of speech, what we can draw is this: that the psychology of the Jains. For an example, that's the reason why they were propagating centering around the issues like unemployment, corruption of political elitism, failure of political promises, global awareness and digital connectivity, desire for systematic change and justice. So these are not really normative issues. These are real issues, actual issues, right? So as I mentioned a little while ago, there has been a paradigm shift, you know, and the earlier debates were centering around those. But now, after 2015 constitution, since all those debates were resolved with the constitution, the new debates started to take shape. Now, let me also mention, I will highlight a point or statistics, which is that the average age of Nepali politicians or political elites now at this very moment is actually close to 60 years. What does it mean? It means that there has been a discontinuity. There has been some kind of alienation in terms of joining political parties by the youth. It means that you know these these leaders who are close to 60, they are still the dominant person in political parties. There is no such organic development of new leaders. Why is this happening? Because and this is one of the reasons why these youth protesters, they mentioned this, that about the issue of nepotism. The children of these political leaders, they are taking education abroad, they are taking all the advantages of the government, and they are becoming richer and richer, and they are enjoying their life in a different manner. And there is no kind of organic progression in terms of joining political parties and also becoming leaders. And it is quite simple, similar to West Bengal. For an example, for last 10-15 years, there is no students' union election. Similarly, in Nepal, there was no students' union election for some years now. So what does it mean? That new leaders are not coming. So there has been a kind of alienation. Second theoretical trend that I would like to employ is the subaltern counterpublics, and this is the idea by Nancy Fraser. And Nancy Fraser, kind of critique, Jürgen Habermas's idea of single unified public sphere. Nancy Fraser argues that in a stratified societies, marginalized groups who are excluded or silenced in dominant public spaces create their own parallel arenas of discussion, debate, and identity building. These are called kind of subaltern countercultures. So if we imagine these people, Gen Z, as the subaltern counterpublics, then it eases out our understanding of the issue. And of course, the third thing through which you can look into this is the precarity, the idea of precarity by Judith Butler. And where Butler uses this idea of precarity to describe a condition of social and economic vulnerability in which people lack security over their livelihoods, rights, and future. So Gen Zs are also, mentioning this in different forums that, their future is in danger, and their future means Nepal's future. As I mentioned, that they are 40% of Nepal's population. So this is another way looking into this. Now, if kind of, if I have to wind up this discussion now, look, as I mentioned at the early part of my lecture, that there has been parallels. For an example, all these student protests wherever it happened. Now, the thing is this, that the most discussed one of the most discussed topic in recent days, world over, is of course democratic backsliding. Now, I remember a incident which happened with me when I joined a college very early
Asit,
in
can
my
we have
career.
another 2 minutes maximum so that we can have a
2 minutes.
discussion?
Yeah. So then the principal asked me. I was only 24 years old at that point in time. So she asked me to kind of join as election commissioner to conduct the students' union election. Then I replied to her that, ma'am, I love democracy, but I hate elections. Now, this is exactly the case. The thing is this that the democracy lovers and the people who believe that democracy is the alternative of democracy. We believe that without elections we can't imagine democracy. But these examples like Nepal have shown that democracy has different connotations. Democracy has another connotation in the form of street democracy. Therefore, people will come up with objections. For an example, they have burned people alive and everything. Look, as in my short article, I mentioned that with which I will definitely stop. Is this that democracy is two connotations, which to my mind is this: that one is like Durga, which is quite organized, conventional, with all its kind of structures and functions, uh, elections and everything. And there is another form that is Kali, and this form Kali, and there is a difference between Durga and Kali. Durga can divide, or differentiate between dharma and adharma, differentiate between good and evil. But the Kali form, it doesn't, it can't. For Kali, everything is same. So if you invite this form of democracy, then it will never, you can't expect anything more than what we have seen. So it will never kind of differentiate good and evil, and between good and evil. So this is what we have witnessed. And for those who, kind of try to generalize that this is, of course, there must be some kind of foreign intervention. Let me remind them that there are a lot of foreign donors in Nepal, no doubt about that. And, the biggest one at the moment is Japan, right? US is there, India is there, and many other nations are there. Yes, there are increasing Chinese footprints and everything. If there are questions, I will definitely try to answer. But the thing is that this Gen Z protest is organic by nature. And the youth has always been a force. But what differentiates this Gen Z protest from the other, forms of participation in the past is this, that they have truly evolved as, kind of counter publics, right? So thank you. Thank you for listening.
Thank you, Dr. Mistry. Uh, But the takeaway, he's basically concentrated on Nepal, and he has gone into the depths, explaining what has happened in history and how things has happened. And the small country has confronted a number of movements, none of which has given it a stability, none of which has given democracy, the democratic space. What actually constitutes a successful democracy in South Asia is just what I think everybody has, as academicians, we need to think about. So before, I think we can take about one or two questions. We have just enough time for one or two questions. There is a hand raised, which I will get to later. I have two questions in the chat box, and they are not exactly directed to anybody particular, but I would then I have the prerogative to decide who will respond to this. So the first question is by Khalid Hassan, who says, what about Hasina's dictatorship and authoritarian regime? This is a biased analysis in the lens of one eye. Academicians should be both eyes analysis. So I think Debasish had gone to the length and breadth about Bangladesh. So maybe he can take on to this question. Debasish, have you heard what I've said? You want me to repeat?
Yes, please repeat, ma'am.
So the question is by Khalid Hassan, who says, sir, what about Hasina's dictatorship and authoritarian regime? This is a bias analysis in the lens of one eye. Academicians should be both eyes analysis. So I think this question actually, I have the prerogative to, I think, kind of intervene. Actually, An academician has also kind of a duty to look into the length and breadth of any issues. So I don't think there is a question of being a bias. But having said that, I'll leave it to Dr. Nandy to respond to that. Let me just give one more question, which is here in the chat box, and which is from Dr. Minarul. It says, very good evening to all. As radicalism is a threat, so is undemocratic, corrupt government for South Asia. In that context, should we prefer government of Sina to that of Yunus? So, whether Ashish is in a position to respond, may choose to respond to that. And we have one hand raised, which would the speaker like to come on camera and direct the question to anybody particular?
Hello.
Yes, can you make yourself visible, please? Yes.
Hello. Am I audible?
Yeah, you're audible. Do you have a question? Please make it short and precise and direct it to the person you want to ask.
Yes, ma'am. I just have two questions. First of all, I would like to push back on some things that Dr. Debasish has said. I saw that the use of language that he used when he was analyzing and describing Afghanistan, some of it had colonial elements. Like he said that the people did not know about democracy. The Afghans did not know about democracy, as if Afghans had no scholars, no academicians who analyzed democracy outside of the Taliban influence. And the other word he used is that there is a country in South Asia, maybe he was talking about Bhutan, that people were immature in terms of democracy. This is very white man's Westerner outlook towards South Asia, that unless we teach you how and what a democracy is, you are very immature in those terms. So I take offense to that. But I have a question to him is, he said that Islam has been unsuccessful in uniting Afghans. There are so many ethnicities and so many religions. So I would like to ask you, but radical Islam, we may disagree on whether it is the true Islam or not, but radical Islam seems to unify all the Afghans. Taliban seems to have brigades of Hazaras, which is the most contended community, the Shia community, which is backed by Iran and has been the bone of contention between Iran and Afghanistan. They also seem to be part of Taliban. So I would like to ask you on that. How is that possible that a pervasive interpretation of Islam is able to unite Afghans, but according to you, the moderate or sort of a mainstream Islam is not? And I would like to ask another question to Sir AMTOL. I don't know what their name was. Hello, sir. Sir, I would like to ask you that when we look at all of these events that you have said, we look at the timeline of Nepal and the events in Nepal, we cannot look at them in isolation from the sort of a bigger picture that is emerging out of Southeast Asia, or the bloc formation around China and the battle or the war that is about to begin, or the ideological war that is about to begin between China and USA. Some might argue it has already started. So we cannot analyze or study all of these events in isolation from those things.
Kindly make your question.
Yes, ma'am. I'm coming to my question. So, sir, my question is, when we analyze these events while looking at that broader picture, we seem to see many different angles to this. And one of those angles is that every country where a government is toppled and these sort of rebellions happen, it seems to turn anti-India very quick. So what does that mean for the future of democracy in India and the future for India's foreign policy in Southeast Asia with reference to the emerging blocization of Southeastern countries? Thank you, sir.
Thank you for your question. I think that gives two questions to each of the speakers, and you may have 5 minutes each to respond to that. So perhaps Dr. Nandy may start.
At first, thanks to the person who raised the question for me. First of all, in response to first question, I never biased. I am not a biased academician. This is not. How can you tell me just I am a biased academician? Before raising the question, please be careful. I object. You can ask question, Why you can blame me, the biased academician? You can't say. Nobody can say. In response to your answer, I must say that in Bangladesh, I never claimed that Hasina was very fair. For the last two elections, Hasina didn't allow the oppositions to contest it. So that is why Hasina cannot be claimed herself as the democratic. My argument is that after her dismissal from her post, that in Bangladesh, the emergence of the radical force, the basic spirit of Mujibur Rahman has been questioned. That is my argument. Basic structure of the country can be changed in near future. I never said Hasina was very fair. I visited repeatedly Bangladesh. I am associated with the Bangladeshi academicians. So whenever Hasina actually was challenged, before that, I visited Dhaka University as a visiting faculty. I saw how Hasina restricted the opposition parties. They used to be organized to protest against Hasina, but Hasina used the police forces and military to counter them. So we can say Hasina was fully democratic. Number two, this is very true. In Pakistan, there are so many religious groups, inter-religious clashes. You can deny the clashes between Shia and Sunni and how they are treated as the second-class citizens. And in Afghanistan, is the Islamic country, that we can deny the clashes among the very ethnic groups. So I never can say that in Afghanistan there is a mature civil society. You can give any example. There is a very strong civil society movement in Afghanistan. And for Bhutan, yes, Bhutani people never demanded for democracy. They never protested for democracy, just like Nepal. In the same year, when the Nepali people toppled the monarchical system, in the same year, whereas the Bhutani people, Bhutani king gifted democracy to the Bhutani people. That is the difference. And the first election, there is no role of the mass media. Mass media is considered the fourth pillar. That's all for me.
Thank you, Dr. Nandy. So now, Dr. Mistry, you have two questions too. Would you like to respond to them?
Very interesting. First of all, can we really guess what is going to happen in India in terms of the memory that we have? Like in 1991, we had Arab Spring and aftermath of this chain of events. Can we guess on the basis of this? My answer is no. As a sociologist, or as a political anthropologist, I can't say that it is going to happen. The thing is this: the argument needs substantive evidences. And I have produced so many evidences which tells us that, yes, of course, this generation, they are well connected, interconnected, they are a part of the global civil society. They feel like that. In fact, they are quite connected with the world, and they are making sense of whatever is going on. And there are some patterns, some similarities. Okay. But the issues, let's talk about the issues. As I mentioned, that there has been a paradigm shift, right? And in South Asia, you will find two things everywhere: Indocentrism and Indophobia. In all political parties contesting elections anywhere in South Asia, you will find this. In Maldives, you will see the same phenomena. In Nepal also, Nepali Congress has been very closer to this idea of Indocentrism. They were propagating this idea. And whereas the Maoists, for UML, for an example, they were absolutely against this, and they have their Indophobic presence from the very beginning. And with a rising Chinese footprint there, it's not always necessary that we have to bring in the foreign policy angle. It's as it has been a part of my argument, major argument, that this protest, as you question whether we should see this in isolation. It's not about. I'm not saying that we wanted to. We need to rather see this in isolation. But the primary logic behind the kind of incident what has taken place is, of course, it has its organic root, and then there are secondary reasons, but secondary reasons cannot be the primary. So that's the difference. Now, what I wanted to add to this is that this is very interesting. As I mentioned, that this Indophobic kind of character. Why is this? Why is that developed? For an example, India, as you brought in the foreign policy angle. I'm not an expert of foreign policy. Ma'am can definitely intervene in this. But the problem with India has always been like India treated Nepal and the other in South Asia, many of them, Devashishda can tell in a vivid manner, as the friends. Look, in foreign policy, I am not a great fan of calling a neighboring country a friend. Rather, they should be treated more as partners. So there is a difference between friendship and partnership. So if what's the demand and why is this Indo-phobia in place? Nepal has always wanted to be a partner, but they were treated as friends. When you treat somebody as friend, you will take it for granted, take him or her for granted, like he's my friend. So in foreign policy making, and that is one of the reasons why in election, when the Maoists were propagating, they were campaigning, they were flagging this issue that basically Nepal under Nepali Congress will function as the agent of India. So of course, there are other reasons. They are well connected to the global civil society. They are familiar with the happenings around, but there has been an organic demand, and therefore this lecture is. I have I have tried to establish an argument that why this has taken place, because there has been a paradigm shift after 2015. And because of this, since we are moving from normative issues to actual issues or real life issues, like unemployment, like, this nepotism and these issues. So this is the reason why exactly people are on streets. And you would remember that I finished it up with the argument that this is another form of democracy. I'm not saying this is a kind of backslide. Backsliding is something else when people are manipulating elections, But this is another form of democracy, possibly the kind of very unconventional form of democracy. And this is one of those unconventional forms of democracy to bring back democracy. This is also an alternative to democracy. That's what was my argument. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Mistry, for your and Dr. Nandy for your responses. So, as closing arguments, I think that comes out of the dire discourse is that the form of democracy and its varied avatar we are seeing, including the mass movement that is happening. Each has its own trajectory. So I don't think there is any one grand narrative about how South Asian democracy stands. Every country has its own and its own issues, but there are certain issues that are very important. It needs to be questioned is whether we can, continue to follow the Western democracy as it were. There has been a lot of questioning about whether the Western forms of democracy can be ideally fitted into what I say the South Asian mosaic. So every democracy has got to go through its own kind of trajectory. It includes challenging the elite. The very important thing is that there is a lot of questioning about the political elitism is something that one has to look into it. And because of the kind of personalism, dynastic rules, along with the issues of corruption that seems to be flooding every country, right? So this is one thing. So therefore, the political economy, when it talks about welfareism and things like that, it also has to be taken onto its flip side, and the questions of corruption and accountability has to be into consideration. Okay? The most important thing that I feel that all of us have move forward as academics is that, what is the way forward? This is an extremely important question, and things have happened so fast since COVID. I think COVID has been one of the biggest shockers since history of humanity. Following that, if you see, there is all these things have come. 22, 24, and 25 that we are seeing. So I think COVID can be contextualized, which is question the ability of the state to handle major human crises. Uh, the speakers have pointed out the issues of environmentalism, which is very true for very fragile ecologies like Nepal and Bhutan. They're very important questions. And alongside the issue of development. As far as Afghanistan is concerned, one needs to really look into Afghanistan's entire historical anthropology to understand that Afghanistan is a unique place, an absolute unique place. And there was a question about how radical Islam, is a kind of a binding force for the different ethnic groups that operate. But I would like to also point in the fact that Afghanistan has been probably one of the countries which has been pumping with a lot of dollars. So it is not only about ideology, it is also about a lot of Western, aid going, money going disarray. The best example is the coming back of Taliban too. In spite of all the money that was pumped by the United States and the European countries, in order to bring about a successful model, it didn't work that way. And the Taliban too came back with a big bang, and there was virtually no defense from what is known as an Afghan force. So similarly, I think apart from the issue of radicalization, which is a very important binding force, there is also a lot of money power that goes in this kind of radical and terrorist activities. So the question that I'm trying to place for us as an academic community is, are we in a position to actually map South Asian democracy in one uniform format or not? Probably, as far as I understand, it is not. Because the kind of historical trajectories all of us have been gone through, all of us have, all the countries have undergone, and the kind of manifestations that we see in terms of corruption, family, etc., which is all for us to understand. So I think I would really like to thank two most important, I think two bright scholars who have spoken at length about South Asian democracy, leaving food for thought. We all know they're very enterprising scholars. They have spoken various podiums. We all know about them, and I wish them all the best in the future. And I thank the association for allowing me to be a part of the deliberation. It has also been learning experience for me. I always think there is so much to learn from the young generation. And having said this, and I thank the audience for their questions and their patience, and I hand over now further deliberation to West Bengal political science. So I think I have been a good chairperson as far as time is concerned. I think I've been able to wind up my time, my part. Thank
you. Thank you, ma'am. Hello all, I am Ronit Mukherjee. I am an executive committee member of West Bengal Political Science Association. At first, I would like to thank all of you, my senior colleagues, my classmates or batchmates, and the future generation of this political science panorama for listening to this wonderful discussion. I thank Professor Bimal Shankar Nando, our president of this association, for encouraging us to hold such conferences in so many numbers, and Professor Apurva Mohan Mukhopadhyay, our general secretary, for his active participation and his endeavors that actually make all of our plans to grand successes. I thank our executive committee for their constant support, and without whose deliberate efforts, all of these programs would not have been possible. I thank Professor Ishani Noshkar for chairing this session in such with such elegance that we all could have summarized things in our head with her words. I thank our esteemed speakers, Professor Debasish Nandy and Professor Ashish Mistry, for their valuable time. They all are our life members. I would also like to remind our viewers that this entire program was observed by more than 80 participants today, and it is also recorded and circulated in YouTube. It was also run. It has also ran live in YouTube. We do not yet have the statistics, so we can definitely call it a grand success as a webinar. If any one of the participants today has missed any part of this wonderful webinar, then you can go any day to our YouTube channel and listen to it carefully. Also, do not forget to subscribe our YouTube channel. There you can find all the webinars that we have conducted in the last 3 years. Last but not the least, West Bengal Political Science Association also welcomes membership. If any one of the participants are not a member of WBPSA, kindly contact in the same flyer that you have got, that there is a number given of Professor Kaushik Chakraborty. A feedback link is already posted in the in chat section. If you could not collect it, then you can collect that later from Professor Kaushik Chakraborty or Professor Apurva Mohan Mukhopadhyay. Thank you so much once again. I thank all of you. I wish we all have a good Durga Puja ahead. Thank you. Thank you, ma'am.
Yeah, I wish everybody a happy Durga Puja.
Thank you. Happy Durga Puja.
Thank you,
Thank
sir.
you, madam.
Thank you,
Thank you,
ma'am.
everyone. Thank you.